Hello and welcome to another NW podcast. Today we have on AsianP. I know you
Hello.
probably are happy that we finally have someone who has a reputation. Although I'm not to say the other guests haven't had anything, but it's nice to know for a North American on the competitive side, which I know a lot of you people who watch this are from. And so, Asian, thank you for being on the podcast.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, and it's nice because for all you podcast listeners, I've never talked to Asian outside of this. Is that right? Maybe there's been like one or two interactions, but other than that,
More or less, I stay kind of closed off from the rest of the community as of late. I don't talk to a lot of people unless they're in my own group. It's just how I've been. I don't know, especially with the whole issue that happened with the LG not too long ago. I've just been very careful of who I interact with.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sure, we can talk about that or not, whatever's comfortable.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I'm an open book.
By the way, you got some birds in the back.
Yeah, they're gonna be kind of quiet. They're gonna
All
like
right.
kind of chirp every now and then, but they
There'll be
shouldn't be too
the
bad.
sound effects. Is there a story behind the birds?
It really just started after I got basically when Hurricane Harvey hit the coast of Texas over here.
Mm-hmm.
I think some lady had released one of her birds and it just flew into my friend's wife. And then I got that bird. And then when I went to the bird shop, the bird owner kept giving me free birds that he had rescued. So I now have like a culmination of 7 parakeets and I bought 2 cockatiels. So,
Oh my god!
so I just have a
That's
shit ton
awesome.
of birds in my computer room where I most of the time, play video games. So if I'm ever leaving and someone records it from our side, you can definitely hear the birds through my mic.
All right,
It,
that's awesome. Well, now, I think birds are cool to have in the background. It'll be a good sound effect. I'm sure someone can take this and make a soundboard later on. Better watch out. So yeah, we're gonna get into it now. And my first question is, Asian. How'd you get introduced into Mount and Blade?
So, the biggest thing that attracted me just to Mount and Blade was when I first saw the Mount and Blade Warband trailer. I thought, "Oh, this game it looks amazing! You can literally ride on Cav and stab people with long swords and use pikes, and the mechanics just seemed fun." And I bought the game or got the game. What was it? 2009 when the game first came out. Pre-ordered it, got it, everything. However, I didn't have a good enough PC at the time, and my computer lagged to shit. So
Wow.
I gave it a year off, and when I got my first gaming laptop, which is the reason I became a really avid computer gamer, I started playing, and I was very interested in the Napoleonic Wars era at this time. I was
Hmm.
playing, Empire Total War, I was playing Napoleon Total War, and when I got into Napoleon Total War, I got just into the whole like history base of the actual Napoleonic Wars. And when I found out there was a module for Mount and Blade, I decided to download it and it was actually very fun. I loved playing it. Actually, before MM Russia, I played MM Prussia, which was the second Mount and Musket mod that came out back in like 2011, 2010.
Hmm.
Can't remember. So I played that a little bit. I would just play on public servers. I never joined a regiment. Give me 1 second.
Kill the birds. For all of you guys listening, I really wish those birds just died. Oh wait, it's from Hurricane Harvey.
Okay,
Probably
I'm
not.
back. Sorry, I
All
had to
right.
go put a blanket over their
The
cage so it'll be
parakeets.
a little more
All right.
carrot.
All
Uh,
right.
Anyways, so back to what I was saying. I was playing on just, normal public
Mhm.
servers. I took another break from that. I came back maybe 3 or 4 months later, right before Mount and Musket Russia 3 came out, which was the last Mount and Musket mod that came out.
Mhm.
And I went into an EU server because I never played on NA servers, and one of the 84E players, named Crackman, he was actually one of, if you ever heard of the EU 15E that was very good, led by Hecko, he was one of the founding officers for that group. He recruited me off the server. I had no idea how to block, no idea how to really do anything. They took me in open arms. However, I was an American, so of course they treated me a little different. And then Aldemar didn't like Americans too well. So if I ever went inactive, he immediately kicked me. And then if I ever tried to talk, he would just immediately shut me down. However, I did learn how to melee fairly fast. Chambering was the first thing I found out how to do besides
Uh huh.
blocking. So I didn't learn how to block first. I learned how to chamber down attacks. However, back in that mod, all you had to do was down block because the up attack was non-lethal. Really, it would take 5 to 6 hits. It was basically like
Wow.
clubbing a baby seal to death. So it was very fun. I got pretty good on the EU side. I was decent. I knew how to block. I could attack well. However, I spent about a year in the 84E. I also spent some time in the 92nd. both EU mounted musket regiments at the time. Uh, After a bit, though, after my second time joining the 84E, I finally quit and went inactive for about 3 months. Came back, came to the NA scene for the first time, got into a server, realized I was better than 80 to 90% of the players playing at the time, and I immediately got recruited into a regiment called the 60th Regiment of Foot. And from there is where most of my experiences and where my competitiveness actually originates. If you have any questions on that, just let me know.
Yeah, sure. So when you first started getting like the competitive side, what was the pull for you?
So there wasn't a lot of competitive regiments at the time. It wasn't more of like who's best in A. It was just like people 1v1ing each other. There was no real big leagues. It was all line battle events. During this time there was regiments like the 60th, the 29th Worcestershire led by Huguenot. You also had the 00th led by your mics, I think. But...
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I just had to readjust some things.
Okay. You also had the 00th led by I think it was Thundersnow. All these different regiments, and it was fun. The game had a lot of players, a lot of variety. However, the melee compared to now is a lot different. A lot of people could not block whatsoever. If you knew how to down block, you were a god amongst men, and you could be the turning point for any regiment, especially if you're decent.
Down block? You mean just move your mouse down?
Yeah, that's it. Basically, a lot of regiments during Mountain Musket, all they taught their players, especially the new players, was just to down block because that's all they had to do to really, keep everything going and not worry too much. So up attacks weren't really a problem during this time. So I made my way up to Corporal just by being a very good player at the time. But after a few 1v1s and noticing that I had a desire to do something more, I did split off the 60th for a short amount of time with a friend. We made a small regiment. We actually recruited 15 people in the first 2 days. We beat the 8th, which was George's regiment at the time, and we beat them in a small 1v1. I wasn't leading at the time. I was at the back, but even back then, it was only the person at the front doing everything. The person in the back had no say whatsoever. So that's where it started. I was a lieutenant, and that's where I became an officer. However, my friend at the time did leave me and then took the regiment to go join the 29th, merged into it. When I went back to the 60th, and I made my way back up to lieutenant. After various reformations in that regiment, I finally made my way up to major, and that's when I started leading the line by myself. And I was actually scheduling events without my leaders say so. I was kind of doing everything behind his back, and he was getting a little ticked off at it, which was okay. But the thing is, at the time, he was getting very upset because he thought a lot of people were going to choose me over him to lead because we had finally beaten the 8th whenever I chose to lead for the first time. And I think it was a strike to his ego. Oh shit, hold on, girlfriend's calling. I'll put her on hold. Anyways, so yeah, I was getting really good at it, and I loved it. And leading was simplistic at the time, and I didn't worry. It was nice. I've always had a desire to be at the front. Yeah, have you ever heard of Battlegrounds? It was like that Half-Life 2 mod.
a little bit, yeah.
I led actually a few times back in 2008, 2009 with Zobberfish, who formed the 5th KGL. I would join on his public servers, and I would lead the line. But in the 60th, where I actually got to do it competitively, it was pretty fun. However, it wouldn't last too long. I would stay there for about almost 8 months, 9 months. And that was near the time where Mountain Musket was beginning to die, and Napoleonic Wars was about to come out in the next 2 months. So I finally left his regiment. I formed the 3E Gren. However, there was an EU regiment called the 3 Grenadiers at the time, so I'd go in the Tail Worlds, fix my regiment name, and voila, 3eVolt instead of 3 Gren. So the original name for the 3eVolt was supposed to be 3 Gren, but I had to change it last second. So if you ever wonder where I got the name from, that's where. Anyways, yeah, any other questions?
So when you first started with the 3eVolt, did you have a basis of other people to recruit from? Or
yes.
How did that go for you?
Because I was the major in the 60th, and I had gained the respect and loyalty of a lot of the members, especially since I had been leading the line most of the time. Whenever my leader at the time, his name was Webchecks, a lot of them did decide to follow me. So I actually had a pretty good following when I left. took about 15 to 20 people left with me, and I already had a good player base. I was from the get go. I was already able to bring between 12 to 15 players per 1v1. When beginning of NW, I had a little struggle for the first 2 weeks to get members until we got our own server, but I was still able to make do off of the original player base that I had. When I first came in, you ever heard about the second CS led by Crawford?
No.
Well,
Tell me about it.
so second CS was basically a Coldstream regiment that originated also as well in Mount Musket. A lot of the oldies in the community, if they are listening to this, will know who I'm talking about. Crawford was kind of an asshole, but thing is, like, hey, it was good practice. He was one of the better regiments at the time. So for the very first competitive 1v1 I've ever done in NA and WL was a 1v1 against the second CS. So it was us versus them. At the time, balancing, you did not have to balance. Back in the beginning of NW, you did not have to balance.
What was the initiative for people to start NANWL? Like, how'd that originate?
To be honest, I think it became apparent whenever we had the 12th and the 9Y in the scene. And when you had these regiments that are very, like, very competitive, of course somebody's going to want to win a title. However, before NA and WL, RWL was first created by Stocks, if you ever heard about him.
No, but that's fine. Like, most of these people, you can talk about, you need to check in. So Stocks, what was he like?
Stocks was a pretty cool, chill dude. I had a lot of conversations with him. He did try to get me to merge near the beginning of NW. So he was leading the 49E at the time, and he would always talk about, like, hey, we created like this super French coalition or like regiment, we would be great. And I'm like, yeah, but I like my guys. They'll probably leave. Merges happen that way.
Yeah, merges are difficult. One of the things that I'm also interested too is when you were, like, let's say you're with a 3eVolt, and then there's the 12th and the 9Y. What's that like? Was it like in the later era of the community, or were there like a chance for, let's say you started a regiment, would you have that opportunity to be able to like improve and have a good competitive base? Because I know when I started the AF, it was really an uphill battle trying to get people who were even at the least bit competent at melee, because it just seemed the community was dead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, at the time, it was not hard to get players, but it was hard to get good players. A lot of the good players went to the 12th, or were either in the first FKI, which then became the 9Y. And so 3eVolt also had a very large handful of good players as well. For other regiments, it was very hard. Like, a lot of the good players you see in those top, like, 4 or 5 regiments have always been in the community. And for a lot of the other regiments, it was a lot harder. Unless you trained them yourselves, but other than that, no. It was still kind of hard to get good players, but it was not hard to get players.
So how'd you start to rise in terms of competence in the 3eVolt?
When I beat Crawford for the very first time, I realized, like, my regiment was not bad. It was actually very decent. And the turning point where I knew that we were destined for something a lot, like, better than just pub events was when Melander and I went on a 1v1. We 1v1'd each other, so it was 3eVolt versus first FKI. We played, instead of the round system, we did the map system. You do 3 maps, best 2 out of 3, you know what I'm saying? We beat them 2-0 in maps, and when I saw that with my pretty, like, average lineup of guys going against some of the first FKI's guys, I realized, like, hey, we actually have something good here. I had 3 players, though, that would carry my melee every single time. It was either me, one of my best players at the time was named Bonjay. He's played for my my Lieutenant Colonel Lawbringer in his various regiments as well. He's been a pretty chill dude. And a third player that would have been very good and has always been nice to have, especially for 1v1s, I think. Let me think. Was APOC. APOC did join the 3eVolt early on, and he was also one of my best players. So it would be myself, APOC, and Bonjay, and then after a bit, I went through a lot of hardships at the time. I lost a lot of members. Some of my members went to go join, like, the 9Y, not the 9Y, sorry, the first FKI, or they'll go to other regiments. It was just the second QF. Fun fact: I was actually Lieutenant Colonel of the second QF of Tico for like 2 weeks.
When you were trying to, I guess, get your guys in that competitive mode, does having a more competitive regiment, do the people you kind of gather also, what are their mindsets? Do they want to be the best? Or, because one of the issues I had was if someone would join the AF, let's say, they would join not necessarily to be the best. And if that was their goal, it'd be pretty